Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm in a great mood. I had a wonderful conversation with Daryl Davis, a hero of mine. I'm very excited to share it with all of you. And I'm going to get to it. I'm not going to yammer here. I know you're here to see me talk to Daryl, and you're here to listen to what he has to say. But it's a great conversation, all kinds of stuff, a little bit about him, what he's been up to, a lot of the current events going on, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the protests, and a myriad of other subjects. It's a great conversation. But I did want to quickly just mention, a little cross-promotion here. I'm an actor as well, and right now I have a crowdfunder going for a play that I wrote and will be acting in. It went up as a play in 2018, but it's being produced now as a web series, and it just needs a little cash jump start. We were definitely thrown for a loop by the pandemic. We were supposed to launch this thing back in March. So I'll post the link down in the description of the video. If you have any money to give, any contribution, there are lots of perks you can pick up. But if the perks start at $20. You don't have to have $20 to contribute. You can contribute any amount of money you want. $5, $1, $10, anything you got. We will. Every little bit helps. And so, now that the self-promotion is over, I am thrilled to bring you this amazing conversation with an amazing human being. Ladies and gentlemen, Daryl Davis.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. I have a very, very special guest on the Liberty Bridge. I'm so excited about this. I'm having trouble containing myself. With me today is R&B blues musician, author, entertainer, activist, Daryl Davis. The guy you probably know for helping convert over 200 white supremacists out of hate organizations. He wrote a book entitled Clandestine Relationships, A Black Man's Odyssey in the Ku Klux Klan. He also had a documentary that came out in 2016. It's available now on Amazon Prime. I know that much. Called Accidental Courtesy, Daryl Davis, Race, and America. Daryl, how you doing?
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. I have to tell you off the bat why you are a hero to both me, my wife, and everyone here. My show is about bringing people together across ideological divides to find some kind of middle ground. And as someone who cares about that, and I'm not sure where you sit politically, but I consider myself a libertarian. And what I love about what you do, more than just how great it is in and of itself, is your message is one of empowerment and individual responsibility. What you did is you didn't wait for someone from above or some bureaucrat to fix the problem. You got up to answer a question for yourself, and you changed the world. So I love that, and I think that's fantastic. How did that all get started for you, for those who may not be familiar with what you've done?
Sure. Well, I figure this. Our country, our society can only become one of two things. Number one, it can become that which we sit back and let it become, or it can become, number two, that which we stand up and make it become. So we all have to take personal accountability and responsibility for where we live and for the future, for generations that come after us. So we have to ask ourselves the question, do I want to sit back and see what my country becomes, or do I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see? So I've chosen the latter. Now, to answer your question as to how it got started, you have to understand my background. I'm from the United States, of course. I was born in Chicago. My parents are in Virginia, but my dad was in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy brat, traveling all over the world as a little kid. I'm 62 years old now. I started traveling when I was 3. And, you live in a country for 2 years, and then you come home, you're here for a few months, maybe a year, and then you get reassigned to another country abroad. I lived in Africa, I lived in Europe, traveled to many other countries and continents. And when I was overseas, my classrooms, my fellow students were from all over the world, England, France, Germany, Nigeria, Japan, Russia, you name it. Anybody who had an embassy in those countries, all of their children went to the same school. So I grew up with a multicultural environment, which was not what was happening back home here in the States in the early 60s, right? Right. Every time I'd come back, I would be in either a completely black school or a black and white school. meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated.
Did that, sorry to interrupt you, but with your background, did that strike you as a little odd coming when you came to America? You'd notice,
it did.
Like, hey, my class is all black.
It went from not trying to be funny, but it went from Technicolor to black and white.
So it's like the rest of the world. The rest of the world was Oz, and then America was like, yeah, wow.
Yeah. I mean, usually you go from black and white TV to color, right? But it was just the opposite. So yeah, it did strike me a little odd. But I was used to changing environments every 2 years, so it was just another environment until the one time I came back in 1968. I was 10 years old in the 4th grade, and I went to this school in which I was one of 2 black kids, myself in 4th grade and a little girl in 2nd grade. So constantly all of my friends were 4th and 5th graders, and a lot of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. And I joined, and we had a parade in which I was the only black participant. And somewhere down the parade route, I began getting hit with the projectiles like bottles, rocks, soda pop cans, just by a very small group of the spectators. Not everybody was participating in this activity, just by maybe about 4 or 5 people. I remember there being a couple of kids, maybe a year or 2 older than me, and a couple of adults who were throwing things. And because I'd never had any precedent for this kind of thing, my first thought was, oh, those people over there don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. And I didn't realize I was the only Scout being targeted until my den mother, Cub master, and troop leader all came rushing over and covered me with their own bodies. And these were white people, white adults, and shielded me. And I kept asking them, why are they hitting me? I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything to them. And they just kept, shushing and rushing me along, and didn't even answer the question. And so when I got home, my parents, who were not in attendance of the parade, were fixing me up, getting me all cleaned up, and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? And I told them what had happened. And for the first time in my life, they sat me down and explained to me at the age of 10 what racism was. And I had never heard the word before. I had no reason to. I was getting along with people from all over the world, from every nation, every ethnicity. Now, sometimes, we didn't speak the same languages, but at least we played together, we worked together, we had slumber parties together, we all got along. Race came into play until I would come home. So because I didn't have this experience beforehand, I did not believe my parents, simply because my 10-year-old brain could not process the idea that someone who did not look like me and who had never seen me before would want to hurt me for no other reason than the color of my skin. It just made absolutely no sense. I mean, it still makes no sense today, of course, but today I realize there are people out there like that. At the age of 10, I did not know that, and I did not accept my parents' explanation.
So it was confusion and sort of disbelief where you're
exactly, precisely. And had I grown up here in my own country, maybe I would have expected it, and I probably would not be doing the kind of work I'm doing today. I would have stayed as far away from the white supremacists as I could. But because I'd been around white people before and I never had these issues, this had to be some kind of anomaly or something. And a couple months later, the same year, April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And then every major city in this country burned to the ground. And it was then that I realized this thing really does exist. I accepted that it existed, but I did not know why. Why do people not like someone because of the color of their skin? And I formed a question in my own mind at that age, which was, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? And that is what had got me into this quest to find out. And of course, you want to find out something, you go right to the source. And the source was white supremacy in terms of the people who don't like people like me.
Daryl, that's so interesting. You credit the fact that you grew up in all these different places with all these diverse groups of people as the reason why you find yourself able to reach across the aisle on some of these issues? Do you feel like a lot of the pushback you get from some folks in the Black community on this is because that they perhaps didn't have the same kind of diverse upbringing you did?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's interesting.
And some of them, I mean, they really go after me. Some of them do, and then there are those who have gone after me, but then some of them have come back to me and said, "Hey, I get what you're doing now. I'm sorry about that," and things like that. One of my favorite, so listen, when I was a kid, I did a lot of traveling with my folks. Now, as an adult musician, I travel and perform around the world. Not during lockdown right now, of course, but that. So my total sum of travels, when you combine my childhood with my adulthood, has been 57 different countries on 6 continents. So I've literally been exposed to a multitude of religions, ethnicities, colors, traditions, things like that, that have all impacted me and shaped my perspectives. And I tell you what, my favorite quote in regards to this is by Mark Twain, and you'll see why it's my favorite. Mark Twain, it's called The Travel Quote by Mark Twain. And he said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime."
Wow.
That explains the whole thing to me. That's
powerful stuff. Let me ask you this, because I'm just so fascinated by this. I have so many things I want to ask you. I've seen you display, and well, first of all, I've heard your story several times. I watched the documentary. I did a lot of reading about you. I watched a bunch of other interviews. I listened to you on Joe Rogan, and I've heard a lot of different emotions from you as far as how you engaged with some of these white supremacists. I've seen you discuss fear. I've seen you discuss understanding, laughter, and all these things. But one emotion that I'm stunned I haven't seen from you in all of this is anger, because I feel like a discovery of a 10-year-old Black child that there's racism in the world and people won't like you just because of how you look. Did that ever make you angry? And how have you suppressed anger in dealing with these people?
Yes, of course, it has made me angry. You don't see it, but it's there, and it's still there today. But what I choose to do, rather, is to channel it in a more positive direction. Anger really hasn't changed anything unless you convert that anger to a positive energy and put it in another direction. Convert it from hate and anger to something more positive. But yes, it is there because, this is my country. This is where I live. And I'm contributing to this country just like anybody else. I pay my taxes. I do this. I do that. I'm patriotic, say the pledge, sing the national anthem, all that kind of stuff. So why should I be treated like a second-class citizen in my own country? Yes, I'm angry. But, it's like, you can't beat the hate out of somebody. Now, I'll tell you what, you can beat the hate into somebody. If you beat them enough, they're going to become very hateful. But you cannot beat the hate out of them. It's like you can't unring the bell, once it's been rung.
So I guess a question then, a follow-up to that would be, how do we get through? Because, I mean, look around the world. I want to talk to you about some current events going on at the moment. But there's a lot of anger out there, Daryl. And I think it's an obstacle. And while the anger is certainly justified, I mean, just dipping into the George Floyd tragedy for a second here, there's so much justified anger around that incident. But what breaks my heart about that is there was a brief moment for a few days after that happened, when all of the usual justifiers for police brutality that I know were like, okay, that is horrible. I feel like most people with a heart and some moral compass saw that and were outraged. And it feels like in the time since that, though, it's become divisive again, and now everybody's kind of back in their own corners. Do you feel that?
I feel some of that, yes. And let me try to give you my perspective on it.
Please.
Okay. Yeah. Now, George Floyd was an important entity, but There have been hundreds of George Floyds just as important. Nobody deserves to die the way that man died.
100%.
He did not deserve to die anyway.
Right.
It should have been determined in a court of law if he was breaking the law knowingly. Okay, let's start with Eric Garner, for example. Remember Eric Garner up on Staten Island, the original I Can't Breathe guy.
Absolutely horrible.
He was up there selling loose cigarettes on the sidewalk. Was he committing a crime? Yes. It is illegal to sell tobacco without a license, just like alcohol and things like that. Should he have been arrested? Yes. And he should have been arrested and taken to court and let the court decide what to do with them. Instead, the police, body slammed him to the ground. He wasn't resisting. They choked him to death on live cell phone camera. He's saying, I can't breathe, and they kept on going till he died. And these cops were acquitted of that. That was a non-violent crime. It wasn't like he was a mass murderer or rapist or something like that, or bomber,
Right.
Yes, he deserved to be penalized and gone to court, etc., but not murdered like that on the street. George Floyd, same thing. George Floyd was lynched. That was a lynching. You've seen pictures from the 1930s, 1920s of a bunch of white people pointing at a black body hanging from the tree and smiling. Their faces are uncovered. They're proud of it. This person had been accused of something. Accused is the key word, right? And the cops and law enforcement are in on it. A lot of times they're members of the Klan back then. They would leave the jail and police station open so it wouldn't get destroyed. And the mob would come in, extract the person from the cell, take him to a tree, and string him up. And and pose for pictures, unabashedly. So, that is a lynch mob before the person has a chance to go to court. So the store owner there in Minneapolis thought he recognized this $20 bill as being something counterfeit. And he called the police, as he should. Counterfeiting is illegal. But now we don't know if George Floyd knew that he was passing a fake $20 bill or not. He could have had a $100 bill yesterday and bought something and got some change, and one of the 20s that he got in change was counterfeit. Maybe he did know it and was trying to fraud somebody, or maybe he didn't know it. That would have been determined in a court of law.
Yeah.
Instead, he was extracted from going to the court and lynched. All right. And while the person looked right into the camera doing it unabashedly. That's a lynching. Anyway, so what happens is Black Lives Matter is formed because of things like that. And George Floyd, of course, was not the first, neither was Eric Garner. The point is, black men in these positions get to go to their grave, where white men in the same circumstances either go home or they go to jail. Some go to jail via Burger King, as in Dylan Roof, right? You remember him?
Absolutely.
Church
shooter.
Yeah, church shooter. And then what happened when he got inside the police car when they arrested him? He said he was hungry. And the police took him to Burger King, bought him a hamburger, and then took him to jail and processed him. So what Black Lives Matter, their purpose in creating the movement, it's not an organization, it's a movement. Organization, has one centralized place and one president, and you pay dues, etc. This is a movement. Their goal was to put the national spotlight on the plight of black men who, for lack of a better term, were being murdered by white police officers, whether they were innocent or guilty, whereby white men in the same predicament got to go home or go to jail. The idea came from Martin Luther King, who put the national spotlight on the Rosa Parks incident with the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. Of course, Rosa Parks was not the first to refuse to give up her seat, but the news only made it around Montgomery, Alabama. So King figured if I put the national spotlight on it, everybody would see it. Put Montgomery in the fishbowl, and then things would change. And he was right. So that's where the idea for BLM came. Unfortunately, the founders of BLM did not trademark the name. They didn't want to. and they did not centralize the idea, turning it into a central organization where policy is created right there at headquarters and then disseminated to all the chapters around the country so everybody is on the same page.
Right.
They wanted it to be organic. And I think at the time, I don't know them personally, but I think at the time they had no idea how big this thing was going to blow up into. And now you got about 90 different chapters of Black Lives Matter all over the country, and they all are autonomous. They all are on different pages. Some consist of Black supremacists. Some consist of people who are very aggressive, and then others consist of people who want to work with the legislature and try to get things changed through those channels and things like that. So you don't have them all on the same page, and that's the problem. Because what happens is with the media, let's say, where are you located?
I'm in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area.
Okay. Well, for example, there are several chapters in New York. One of the New York chapters of Black Lives, or factions, one of the factions of Black Lives Matter in New York and one in Detroit has contacted me and said, "Hey, do you give workshops? We want to do what you do." And then there are other ones who just rip me a new one. They don't understand what I do and don't like what I do. But the thing of it is with the media, if the New York chapter does something really good with Black Lives Matter, and then let's say the New Jersey chapter does something stupid with Black Lives Matter, the media just says Black Lives Matter did this. They don't say the New Jersey chapter or the New York chapter or the Boise, Idaho chapter. They just paint it with a broad brush. So that way it reflects across all the Black Lives Matter chapters. Yeah. And you can't have that, if you want to unify and be strong. So it's very divided, and that goes to your point of where people are getting back into their corners again, and that's the wrong thing to do. We've come a long ways this time. We are turning another page in our history. We turned pages with Martin Luther King. We turned pages with Barack Obama, and now we're turning a major page, right? The biggest page in the 21st century thus far to turn. While that focus was primarily on the police, there was a large ripple effect that happened as a result of it. NASCAR, of all places, banning the Confederate flag. The state of Mississippi removing the Confederate flag out of their flag. That is unprecedented, right? And Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben changing their labels, statues coming down, all that kind of thing was the ripple effect that nobody expected. But I'm going to tell you how that happened, and this is what we need to focus on. You got to look at the past. Take Barack Obama, for example. Black people did not put Barack Obama in the White House. White people put Barack Obama in the White House because black people only make up 12% of this country, and not all 12% are eligible to vote. Some of them are not registered, some of them are not old enough. But let's just say that every black person in this country, all 12%, including newborn babies, could vote. That still would not be enough of the black vote to put that man in the White House. We needed to add to that a lot of white vote. That's what put him in there. All right. 20 years ago, Barack Obama never could have won the White House because the attitudes of white people were not there yet to say, I'm going to vote for a black man. Right. By 2008, there were enough white people who were willing to say, hey, you know what? I like that guy's policies. I'll vote for him. That's what did it. Okay. Now, keep that in mind. For years, since 1955, the start of the civil rights movement, we've had marches, demonstrations, sit-ins, boycotts, protests, you name it. There have always been white people who've been involved in our causes. But never before, until today, have we seen this many white people out there marching with us after George Floyd. All right? In the past, when it was predominantly black people, the powers that be, and when I say powers that be, I'm talking about the white establishment, had their ears plugged. They did not want to hear us and hear our pleas for equal justice and so forth and so on. They just turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to us. Today, they are seeing more people who look like them out there on the streets marching for what we want. And so they're pulling the earplugs out of their ears, or else inserting their hearing aids, and they're listening. And that's why things are happening so fast. It's that collective voice that is achieving it. It was that collective voice. When I say collective, I mean black and white and whoever else participating together. That collective voice is what put Barack Obama in office and turned that page. That collective voice is what is turning the page now. Because before, if a police officer were to get charged and fired, it would take months. Now it's happening boom, 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 like that. Within a week, the guy's fired, charged, and gone. That collective voice is doing it. And so we cannot afford to divide ourselves at this point in time. But you're absolutely right. It is happening.
Well, I guess my confusion is I don't understand why people, and I've made this point before on my show, one thing I think people don't get, I'm in the arts and I'm an actor and I'm around a lot of people who ally themselves with Black Lives Matter or the political left wing, right? And they a lot of times want to just shut out, for example, Trump supporters, just don't even want to deal with it, don't want to listen, don't want to talk to them. And I hear that. And I think to myself, even if you win this election, even if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris take the White House in 2020, those people aren't going anywhere. You know what I mean? And I don't understand why people can't seem to wrap their heads around what you have discovered, which is that we all have to live in this country. You know, you can enjoy short-term victories or short-term, moments of glory, but we all end up having to share this place.
That's right.
Why aren't people able to grasp that? What's the obstacle there?
Because they don't spend their time, unfortunately, listening to the Liberty Bridge. That's the problem. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. You know, it's cancel culture. You know, they don't want to talk to each other. You know, oh, you're a Trump supporter, I'm going to unfriend you. You know, I'm not going to even have dinner with my family because my brother voted for Trump. You know, all this kind of crazy stuff. Listen, if I can walk into a Ku Klux Klan rally looking like I do and have conversations with the Klan, somebody can damn sure sit at their Thanksgiving table and have conversations with their family just because they voted for whoever and somebody else voted for Trump or whatever.
That's an amazing thing you just said, and I agree. We can't let this split our country apart, let alone our families.
Exactly.
And I was amazed too because I watched the documentary a few nights ago with my wife when I knew I was going to talk to you, and at the time, I guess maybe it didn't happen while the documentary was still going, but Jeff Scoop, that conversation really, really intrigued me. For those of you watching this or listening to this who don't know who that is, he was a leader of the National Socialist Movement, one of the largest and most volatile, in my opinion, white supremacist organizations in the world right now. And he's reformed now, right? Is that what I'm?
And he comes out and tours with me from time to time. We give lectures together.
Daryl, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
He was the commander of the NS. He was a 27-year member, and 25 of those 27 years, he served as the commander of the NSM, the largest neo-Nazi organization in the country.
Yeah.
So, you know, if he can change, anybody can change. Change is possible. You know, this ideology is a learned thing. If it can be learned, it can be unlearned. And Jeff is a great guy. Jeff knows all the recruitment tactics that he used and that members of his organization used to lure people in to build that organization. He was a strong leader. You know, leaders don't usually last more than a few years. This guy was there for 2.5 decades leading the place. And so those skills now, he is using those same skills to deprogram people, to get people out of the movement and prevent young people from joining.
That's incredible. So he's not only is he, it's one thing in my opinion, and this is a big enough deal in and of itself to step away from an organization like that, but to then use your knowledge to actively go in and chip away at what remains after you leave. That's
Right.
a whole different thing entirely. And that's what I think some of your critics, Daryl, don't understand, is that this has a ripple effect. It's like throwing stones in a pond.
Right.
Each individual in this country is connected to so many other people. Even if you just pulled 2 or 3 white supremacists out of these organizations, that's how many people in their lifetime that they aren't going to victimize.
Right. Exactly. Listen, supposing, a lot of the criticism I get is because I work with individuals. There is no one way to fight racism and cure everything. It has to be attacked from a multi-prong. We need to attack the systemic, the legal aspects, the individuals, etc. But the point is, we all should cooperate and coordinate together.
Yes.
Not fight racism and fight each other. To me, that's just ridiculous. So, those who fight it systemically, I support them. I applaud them. Whatever I can do to contribute to that, I will. My thing is meeting with them one-on-one, sitting down in a social setting and having a social conversation where we can humanize one another. Because, we can beat somebody into submission, but that's not going to make them stop hating. It's going to make them hate even more. We can change the laws to allow people like me to sit in the front of the bus, and that will compel the white supremacist behavior that they can't kick us out of our seat now, but they're not going to like it.
Right.
So you've got to humanize people in order for them to accept it and make that conversion within themselves. So supposing I had been able to sit down one-on-one with somebody like Dylan Roof, and he took to what I was saying, 9 people might still be alive today. That's not systemic, that's individual.
Yeah. Well, and look, the sad fact is, and whatever your opinion on gun laws, technology is such now that one individual can wreak incredible havoc, even just on his own. Dylan Roof, you probably know more about him than I do. I believe he was radicalized online. Was he a part of any specific group?
No, but online radicalization, and went down the wrong rabbit hole, read the wrong book, etc.
Yeah. Well, and there you go. So if individual people can cause such incredible damage, it makes sense that people fighting racism and people who are looking for a more equal and just world would also take that to an individual front, right? It's only natural.
Well, let me tell you what's happening that the media does not address as they should. They know it's happening, but they don't address it. Is this country was built on a 2-tier society: white supremacy at the top, slavery at the bottom. And as we progressed through the decades, we progressed like this. We did not progress on an even plane. All right. When I was a child, the black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans were 1%. Hispanic Latino people were 2 and 3%, and Asians 4%. Whites were like 84, 86%. So the biggest nemesis for white supremacists, of course, were black people at 12%. That was way too much. They did not care about 1% or 2 or 3% people. So over the years, if you follow the census, go back to the 50s or 60s and come forward to where we are today, check out the population of these different ethnicities or races, as they're called. To me, there's only one race, the human race, but for our purposes, we'll say races. All right. You will see black people have remained at 12% ever since. Right now, we're almost at like 13%. We really haven't grown. I think it's like 12.9%, something like that. Okay, we've not grown. Hispanics have gone from 2 and 3% to 17%. So if you take just black people at 12% and 17% Hispanic, that combined is 29% non-white. So this is happening, all right? And people don't want that to happen. What the Klan and the alt-right and the neo-Nazis are telling me are, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They're calling it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation. And it's happening like that, right? So that's why all these groups are popping up all over the place, said, hey, come join us. We're going to take our country back. We're going to build that wall. This is a white homeland and blah, blah, blah. Our landscape is changing, da, da, da. We're going to take our country back. So people out of fear go and join these groups to take the country back, to make America great again, right? And when those groups don't do anything, this is when they get frustrated and they say, you know what? If the Klan can't do it or the NSM can't do it, I'll do it myself. And that's when they walk into the black church or walk into the synagogue in Pittsburgh or the Walmart in El Paso or something and start shooting up the place. These people are lone wolves. And while we have intelligence agencies who have operatives that, fit the mold and they go and join the organization undercover, gather intelligence, and foil these plots, you cannot infiltrate a lone wolf. How do you get inside one person, right? So what's going to happen is this. By 2042, if you follow the census, by 2042, this country is going to be like this: 50% white, 50% non-white. And next generation is going to flip for the first time in American history, for the first time in 401 years. We came here in 1619, so that's 401 years ago. And the minority is going to become white in 2042. And so these people are becoming unhinged. There are plenty of people, plenty of white people in this country who embrace that and say, hey, that's evolution, that's what happens. I don't have a problem with that. But there is a certain segment of the population that does not want to see that happen. And that's why every time one of these lone wolves gets busted and they go and they raid that guy's home, they find a cache of automatic weapons, which is for the race war, as they call it.
Mm. Do you think a big part of that fear is, I mean, obviously a lot of it is irrational, but do you think there's a certain population of white folks in America who think that, God, when we're the minority, we're in big trouble because of how blacks in this country have been treated? And how do we get through someone who might be afraid of that? Because to me, someone who's thinking that, I don't personally think that's a rational fear, but I feel like somebody who's there is a little bit closer to, being edged into understanding than someone who's just flat out, no race mixing and all that nonsense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a big fear. Some would call it white guilt or something like that. They feel, they're going to get their comeuppance. The roosters are going to come home to roost or whatever. None of that's going to happen. Nobody who's been oppressed that much is going to turn around and start oppressing other people like that. It's not going to happen that way. This is why people need to be vigilant and be aware of these people and do our best to try to educate one another and get to know one another in order to reduce that fear, mitigate, those thoughts. It's just like you remember 1999. Everybody was freaking out over the year 2000. Why
Y2K.
Y2K. My VCR will stop working. The whole world's going to come to an end. That anxiety is that same anxiety over 2042 that people were feeling in 1999 for Y2K. The 2042 is going to be the white supremacist apocalypse.
Wow.
And this is why we need to address this.
I agree fully, Daryl. Let me ask you a couple quick questions here.
Sure.
Just some oddball thoughts here. One of the things you mentioned that is, I think, highly controversial to some people on your side is this idea that if somebody is saying something terrible, controversial, give them a platform. Mm-hmm. The practice of canceling or deplatforming is such a big thing happening right now. And the argument there, which I can understand logically, even if I don't agree with it, is don't let them even take root or grow by getting their message out there. Why are they wrong?
They're wrong because in order to convince somebody that their message is wrong, you have to let them be heard. You have to let them get it out there, because why would anybody listen to you if you're not going to listen to them, if all you do is shut them down? And in the 57 countries that I've been to, no matter how far I've gone, from where I am right now here in the United States to the other side of the world, to meeting people who don't look like me, who don't speak my language, who don't practice the same cultures I do. When I come home, at the end of the day, all of those people I've determined are human beings. And we all want the same four things. We want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to be heard, and we want the same thing for our family as they want for their family. And if we, no matter how different somebody is, if we remember those four things, they will go a long way to our navigating through society. People want to be heard. All right. So I let these people be heard, because if people are worried, they're going to influence somebody, and then the somebody they influence are going to become like them. So that's assuming that most people that are stupid and are going to be influenced by them. Yeah, maybe some will, perhaps some will, but that's the reason why you want them to be heard, because there'll be plenty more who will not be influenced, and they will be called to action. Hey, this has to be addressed. These people are out there spewing this stuff. How can we address this? And there'll be somebody out there smarter than me who can figure out how to address it 10 times better than I can. Because there are always people always come up with new ideas, but you cannot address anybody until they're going to listen to you. You cannot beat the Nazi out of a Nazi. There's that expression, punch a Nazi.
Right.
I don't know any Nazis who've been punched that all of a sudden they're no longer a Nazi. So if you want to be heard, you've got to reciprocate.
Absolutely. How do you feel about, I talked at length in one of my previous videos about the statue issue, the statue controversies, Confederate statues. This issue actually directly impacted people in my community. I'm Italian American, and I have a lot of people in my life. Just between you and me, Daryl, I don't really give much of a shit about Columbus. But there's well, there we go. But I have a lot of people in my community who have a lot of varied opinions on Columbus, because I have a lot of Italian family, a lot of Italian friends, and these statues, either legally or illegally, are getting ripped down right now. What are your thoughts on the statue? Is there some kind of middle ground? Should they go? Should they stay? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Well, first, let me say about Christopher Columbus. Italians have contributed a great deal to this country, and they have been discriminated against, especially when they first were coming over here, being called WAPs and all that kind of stuff. And you know what WAP stands for?
I don't actually. I'm familiar with the slur, but I haven't. I don't know what does it mean?
WOP, without papers.
Ah, there you go. Wow.
And it came through Ellis Island without papers. WAP. And it was a derogatory term used against Italians. Also, the term guineas were, another derogatory term. And of course, if you want to be in the mafia, you must be Italian. So people want to associate that with every Italian.
Right.
And again, it does not apply. Same thing with Polish people. They make fun of Polish people in this country, make fun of Chinese people. So everybody has had their turn at being made fun of. And it's very unfortunate. And this is why, we need to coalesce and come together. But anyway, back to the statues. Look, let me just give you some examples here. We Americans went to war against Great Britain, and we beat Great Britain, which is why we celebrated about a month and a half ago Independence Day on July the 4th. So there are plenty of Americans here in this country of British descent who have ancestry in the British Empire, who fought against this country. Do those Americans of British descent go out here and build statues of King George III? No. Do they fly the Union Jack? No. Why? Because we beat Great Britain. The loser does not get to build his statues and fly his flag on the winner's property. All right. Okay, listen, we went to war against Japan when on December 7th, 1941, they bombed Pearl Harbor. Now, there are plenty of Japanese Americans in this country. And as you know, we did them wrong. We put them in internment camps. But they were full Americans, just like you or I. We beat Japan in that war. Do the Japanese Americans who have ancestry that fought against this country from Japan, do they go out here and build statues to Emperor Hirohito and fly the Japanese flag? No, for the same reason. They lost. We went to war, as we all know, against Germany. Plenty of Americans died going to war against Germany in World War II. There are tons of German Americans in this country, and you know every German American in this country has ancestry that fought under the Third Reich because they had to. He was a dictator. You either fought for him or you were exterminated unless you fled the country and got out. All right? So Germany lost. Do these German Americans go out here and build statues to Adolf Hitler or Joseph Goebbels or these people and fly swastikas? No, not unless they're neo-Nazis or something. All right? So the loser does not get to build his statues and fly his flag. Simple as that. Guess what? The Confederacy lost. They lost.
Yeah.
Okay? They need to get over it. They don't get to fly their flags and build their statues. This is the United States of America, not the Confederate States of America. Had the Confederacy won, then yes, we'd all be flying the rebel flag. But here's the thing. I don't believe the statues and flags need to be ripped down or torn down. I believe they need to be taken down and placed in a museum or placed in a Confederate memorial park dedicated to that as part of history so that people can go there and see those things. Because listen, I have Confederate ancestry in me, just as any white Southerner does, because my parents were from the South. In fact, my parents were from the seat of the Confederacy, which is Virginia. My parents were from Roanoke and Salem, Virginia. They just happened to be in Chicago for my dad's job when I was conceived and born. That's all. All right, but they're from Virginia. So, as anybody knows, there were plenty of blacks who fought in the Confederacy because black slaves had to fight for their slave masters. So against the whites, the blacks, and everybody else in the Union Army. So my ancestors fought in the Confederacy. Now, do I honor my ancestors? Absolutely. Do I honor the Confederacy? Absolutely not. You know, that Civil War was fought over maintaining slavery. That's what it was fought over. People say, no, it was fought over heritage. It was fought over states' rights. Yeah, it was fought over states' rights. The state's right to own a slave.
Slaves. Yeah.
You know? So,
of course.
Exactly. And
people always start stammering when you ask them to expand on that. State's right to what? And
exactly.
You know.
Exactly. And in terms of heritage, the South has a lot to be proud of. A lot of heritage to be proud of. Slavery is not one of them.
Be proud of the food. The food down there is
food,
excellent.
The hospitality, a lot of things. but slavery is not one of them.
Yeah.
So, and the Confederacy lost. So, you know, you want to honor your great ancestors who you never met, because nobody alive today ever knew anybody from the Civil War. You know, you can do it at the Confederate Memorial Park or in the museum. But the loser should not be able to fly their flag or their statue on the winner's property.
Let me ask you quickly about this. It's a little bit more of a shade of gray than that. There are some, probably I think it's a much smaller group of people than are calling for removal of Confederate generals. But there are some folks now asking about the founding fathers. Well, how do you feel about statues of slave owners, for example, people that are unbelievably American, people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who have that unfortunate history of being slave owners.
How I feel about that is this. Uh, they don't get a free pass. They don't get a get out of jail free card. But their statues should remain. However, a plaque should be placed on the base of their statue or somewhere nearby it, telling their history. But because they rose to the highest position in the country, President of the United States, their statue should stand. But their history should not be omitted.
Agreed.
It should be, out there for people to see that, yes, this person became the first president or the 12th president or whatever, but he also owned slaves or did this or did that.
I think intent matters, Daryl, and so what I tell people on the statue issue, I'm curious your thoughts on this idea. The reason statues of the founding fathers, for example, are erected is to celebrate the founding of the country, what they did in the Revolutionary War, whereas the Confederate generals, we're celebrating them specifically for fighting to keep slavery, and that's a difference.
And they were fighting against what? The United States.
Right.
That's treason. Treason. Do we see statues to Benedict Arnold out here? No.
Right. Yeah.
So why should Nathan Bedford Forrest or Stonewall Jackson or Jefferson Davis have a statue?
Yeah.
They were treasonous. Benedict Arnold was treason against. He was spying for the Revolutionary War, and these guys were turning against the U.S. From within. They were domestic treason.
Yep, absolutely. Here's a question I had for you. I've been talking with a lot of people about this issue, the issue of race and Black Lives Matter and how we move forward from here. And something I've heard that I find a little bit troubling, but I want a perspective from someone I respect as much as you. I've heard from Black folks that I've had conversation with on this. Well, but it's not the job of oppressed people to educate those who are the oppressors. That doesn't feel right to me because
they don't feel right because it's not right. Yeah. All right, I hear that all the time, and a lot of my detractors get on me for that, because that's exactly what I'm doing. Listen, it's time in this country that we stop saying I'm not my brother's keeper and start saying I am my brother's keeper, because no one in this country knows everything. All right, we all are part of a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. Given our different ethnicities, our religions, our cultures, etc. And right now, the jigsaw puzzle is apart and all the pieces are scattered. The picture is not beautiful until those pieces link up and make that, that mural or whatever it is. If there's something that I don't know and you know it, I want you to share it with me. If I have something that you don't know, I'm going to share it with you, because that's the only way we're going to be able to come together. All right. We are, the best way for an enemy to defeat you is to divide and conquer. Well, hell, his job is already done. We're dividing ourselves. Now all he has to do is just walk in and conquer. We have to teach each other. We only know what we know, and one's perspective is one's reality. Let's take a look at, let's say Malcolm X, for example. All right. Malcolm X was at one time a black supremacist. Right, he was in prison, and he hooked up with somebody in there that got him hooked up with the Nation of Islam, and he became a minister in the Nation of Islam under Elijah Muhammad, and he was vehemently anti-white, and he went to Mecca, where made that pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yeah.
And what did he see in Mecca? He saw white Muslims, as Muslim as he was, Oriental, Asian Muslims, Muslims from all over the world. And he was freaked out by it. He was like, wow, how come I never learned this before? Nation of Islam is just one small sect of Islam. It does not represent all of Islam any more than the Ku Klux Klan represents all of Christianity, even though they claim to be a Christian organization, right? His mind was expanded and opened up, and he came back and began sharing that with his fellow Nation of Islam brothers, and that's what got him killed. And so, we need to educate one another. We only know, what we know. For example, if you were to ask 10 of your male white friends this question, what is the first thing that goes through your mind if you're coming home late at night, 2 or 3 in the morning from a date or night shift or whatever, and you're going down some lonely road on the way to your house, and those flashing lights come on in your rearview mirror? You're being pulled over. What's the first thing that goes through your mind? I'll guarantee you, 10 out of 10 of your white male friends are going to say, "I hope I don't get a ticket. I hope I don't. I hope I don't get points on my license. I hope my insurance doesn't go up or whatever." Maybe you were speeding, maybe you weren't speeding, but the fact is you're getting pulled over. That's what they're going to say. You ask 10 of your male black friends, they're going to say, "I hope I don't get shot. I hope I don't get beat up." It's the same situation, but a different perspective. And that's not to say that every cop who pulls over a black person is going to shoot him or beat him up. Okay. But there has been enough of that we have to think about that. We have to behave differently than the white person being pulled over.
And because of that, it immediately puts the person getting pulled over on edge, which makes the situation worse, right?
Exactly. So you got you got the same situation, 2 different perspectives.
Yeah.
So this is why it's important that we teach one another and take the time to do it. Oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have the patience for that. Well, you know what? You got to grow some patience. You got, if you want things to improve, you got to grow that patience, because it doesn't come overnight. It's like, for example, if you go to your doctor and for a checkup, and your doctor says, "Chris, you're in the beginning stages of lung cancer. I'm going to need to put you on 6 weeks of radiation, followed by 4 weeks of chemo." You can't say, "I don't have time for that." You better make the time for it, or you're going to self-destruct.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to make the time for it. Yeah, it is unfortunate that somebody like me has to tell somebody who looks different than me how to treat me. Because apparently, they didn't learn it at home, or they don't know this, or they learned the wrong thing. But it is necessary.
Couple quick questions, because I only got a few more minutes with you, Daryl. I could talk to you for hours. I'd love to.
Let me ask you one question, though.
Yeah.
The same people who tell me that they don't have the time to teach white people how to behave and how to treat black people. These are the same ones who carry megaphones and signs and march up and down in front of the police station because white cops are doing things to black people that they shouldn't be doing. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to teach the white cops how to behave, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're trying to educate them with those signs. What's the difference? I'm sitting down with a Klansman. You're sitting down with a cop.
Well, and a lot of those same folks will say that and then say, "Go read this book," or whatever, a book written by a black author. And it's like, well, that black author had to decide that the information they're putting in the book was worth sharing.
Right.
Right. So that's the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, I'd love to have you back on the show sometime, Daryl.
Anytime.
That's great. But just real quick, because I'm an actor, I wanted to ask you very quickly. There's a lot. You have a storied music career, but what drew you to the arts? And I have to add, one of my favorite television shows ever is The Wire. I have to ask you about your scene on The Wire, real quick.
Well, I did 2 episodes of The Wire. Yeah. One in which I played a convenience store clerk, and the cops come in looking for people who bought some, disposable cell phones or something. Yeah. And in the other episode, I think in the last season, I was a state senator at the mayor's speech down on the docks or something like that.
Ah, right.
Yeah. But, I've always liked acting. I acted in high school and college, and I've done some stage and things like that. Music is my real passion. But someone, I should go out and, send in my headshot. And if they call me, go audition for the parts. So I did. And believe it or not, I know the Wire is a great show. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but believe it or not, I've never seen it. I've seen I've seen the clips that I've been in.
Sure.
But I understand that it's one of those serial things where you have to watch it from the beginning because it's progressive or something. Yeah. And I do have the series down on my shelf, but I've never seen it.
Mm. What has the lockdown done for your music pursuits and also your work with dealing with white supremacists? I mean, I imagine this has to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's taught me how to use Zoom and Skype. But yeah, like 4 months of my lectures and music gigs were like instantly wiped off my calendar.
Yeah.
Like an earthquake or something. But hey, things happen. And I'll be back full force. I don't let anything get me down. But it's allowed me. I'm writing my second book now, and I'm almost through with it. So this has allowed me a lot of time to focus on that because I'm home.
What's the focus of the book? Is it on
it'll
planning?
It'll be the same thing, white supremacy. And see, the first book, Clandestine Relationships, came out at the end of 1997, beginning of 98. Since then, of course, we've had a black president. We've had more immigration, both legal and illegal, and we have our current president. So all these things have had a impact on white supremacy. So I want to talk about all those things. So it'll contain the stuff from the old book, and it'll have updates and new stories.
That's great, Daryl. To close us out here, last question: what's next for you personally? How's your museum coming? And do you have hope that we're going to come out the other side of this?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I do have hope because without hope, there'd be no point of us doing anything. We just accept our fate. So yes, I do. I absolutely do have hope. And I see things changing. I see the page turning, and I'm glad for it. We're by no means at the end of the book or even at the end of the chapter, but at least the page is turning. And for my museum, yes, I have my 501c3. I'm still looking for a building that I can own, that I can afford to purchase and own, so I can have a home for it. But in the meantime, I'm going to be loaning a lot of my Ku Klux Klan and Neo-Nazi stuff to the Orlando, Florida, Orlando Holocaust Center, and they're putting on an exhibition on me this fall. And
That's wonderful.
And then it's going to tour around the country, and then come back to me. So maybe by that time I'll have my own building. But yeah, that's what I'm doing.
All right. Daryl, thank you so much. This has been such an honor and a pleasure. I love what you do. I think if there were more Daryl Davises in this world, we'd be in a lot better shape. There's hope.
I'd be in trouble with paternity suits.
Oh, Daryl, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
And man, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you. Anytime.
All right, take care.
Wow, what a guy. I have to thank Daryl Davis and all of his people for working this out and getting him on here. What a pleasure. Perfect first guest for this show of all shows. He has lived what this show is all about, which is coming together and crossing insane ideological gaps. Keep your eyes on him. He's always doing something amazing, and I really hope to have him back again. We talked about it. I fully expect him to be back. He's a great guy, friend of the show. So, yeah, we will be back with Daryl Davis at some point in the future. But thank you all so much. I hope this episode finds you healthy. I hope it finds you free. And, please just keep talking to each other. Keep communicating. Coming up, I got some episodes about toxic election rhetoric. I have episodes about hope, where we can find it. I'm working on an economic series that's going to tackle capitalism, the Federal Reserve, our economic policy in the country. So a lot of stuff happening here at the Liberty Bridge. Please stay in touch with us. Let us know what's going on. Comment, like, share, tell your friends. Talk about us on social media. And check out the crowdfunder once again. That is going to be down in the description of the video. All right? Or the comments on Facebook. Description on YouTube, comments on Facebook. All right? And that's just about it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will see you next time on the Liberty Bridge. Stay healthy. Stay free.